More momentum.
Niger records 6 new COVID-19 deaths.
NEMA says that the death toll is 38, that they've been able to pull out 38 bodies from the collapsed building.
In-depth analysis of events.
Let's not kid ourselves. Nigerians still vote on ethnic lines, and as a result, a northern candidate you would think on paper would have more chances.
Every time ASU has embarked on strike, the revitalization fund has often come up, and people have asked the question.
The Newsroom, Mondays 6:15 to 7 p.m. on your number one talk station, 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
The week started a bit chaotic as President Muhammadu Buhari paid a 2-day visit to Lagos to commission some projects, including a rice mill and a refinery. Well, the chaos, especially for road users, was yet to settle when the APC presidential candidate seemed to all but throw his party and maybe specifically the president under the bus with a rant in Abeokuta. Will Tinubu's outburst there last week threaten the campaign of the APC? Did he actually forget that President Muhammadu Buhari is the Minister of Petroleum? Well, the week got more chaotic as the deadlines for PVC collections and importantly, the one for 3 naira notes to remain legal tenders got closer. From transportation to petty trading and even shopping at supermarkets, it was hell, really. And just when you thought it was over, doubts about the effectiveness of beavers is beginning to creep in after the decision of the Osun State Governorship Tribunal, which nullified the victory of Ademola Adeleke. But guess what? It was not the end of the turbulent week. Yet another truck with a container tumbled over in Ufuoma and left in its wake 9 dead souls. Welcome everyone to the Newsroom. It's a program of Nigeria Info's Newsroom where we'll take a critical look at some of the big stories that have made the rounds in the course of the last week. My name is Ufuoma Egbamuno. It's a pleasure to be here to, of course, host this show. Remember that we're streaming the show on our Facebook portal and of course on our YouTube. Facebook is Nigeria Info 993 and YouTube is Nigeria Info FM. Go check them out and of course you can watch the show right here. Well, our major focus on the show today will be about the judgment of the Osun Tribunal. We've got a lawyer on the show today, but before we get there, I will try to take a look at some of the big stories that have made the rounds in the last 7 days or thereabout. Let's start first of all with the president's visit. Yes, it turned out to be a bit chaotic, especially for commuters. But the great part of that visit, at least 2 significant things stood out for me. The rice mill. It's got the potentials to help Nigeria's food security issues, and especially also for Lagos. More importantly, it creates job opportunities directly and indirectly. People living around that neighborhood will be at least directly affected, by that rice mill. So great kudos to the Lagos State government for that one. And of course the Dangote refinery, yes, I agree, it's a private refinery, and yes, I know all of the issues with the 4 refineries that we've got. Yes, the president, or the administration has promised that one way or the other they will get those refineries working before the end of the president's tenure on May the 29th. But I would rather, look at how impactful the Dangote refinery will be for Nigeria anytime soon. One way or the other, it will help our over-dependence on importing petroleum products to the country. So, of course, good one there. Kudos also to the Independent National Electoral Commission. Finally, listened to Nigerians who have been complaining right here on Nigeria Info that they've not been able to get their PVC. So one extra week, it of course started today, Monday, is going to end on Sunday, the 5th of February. So guys, you do not have any excuse right now, at least on the basis of time factor, not to go get your PVCs. And yes, we have heard reports and we've seen reports of some alleged intentional disenfranchisement of voters, INEC officials allegedly colluding with some party agents or parties to ensure that some persons are given their cards and some are not given. Yes, we've heard all of that. Well, INEC says they will look into it. But I urge you to keep the faith, because as we've said over the last 2 years or thereabouts on this station, elections do have consequences. Your PVC is your right to, of course, do what needs to be done. Let's not talk about the chaos at ATMs, markets, supermarkets, not being able to have money to pay for your bus fares. It was a very, very chaotic weekend. I'm sorry to everyone who, was a part of that chaos. It wasn't funny. It honestly wasn't funny. I did not have, I didn't have that opportunity to actually go out and, take buses, but I know a couple of persons who did, and I know how traumatic it was for some of us who had to go get some groceries over the weekend. It was crazy, having to stand 30 minutes, 1 hour waiting for your transfers to get through. It just was not funny. So kudos to the CBN. It's been extended. Just to also let you know, guys, you have until February 10th. February 10th is when your old 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes will cease to become a legal tender. From February the 11th, you can't use that money again. That's what the CBN has said. However, you have between now and February 17th to go to the nearest bank and, of course, exchange it with the new notes. Yes, I also know that that's also chaotic. In fact, chaos seems to be the word to describe the last 7 days. People queuing up at ATMs, people queuing up inside bank halls to get the new Naira notes. Meanwhile, these new Naira notes are in the hands of people selling them in parties. And you begin to wonder, how on earth did that happen? Well, the CBN governor says they're going to look into it. People will be prosecuted. It was reported on our news just a few minutes ago that, of course, the DSS has apprehended a couple of them. I hope persons, are made to pay so it to serve as a lesson, because it's become a lucrative business for bank officials, and their political cohorts, and of course those who sell these Naira notes at Owambe. Anyway, as if the chaos was not enough, as if it just wasn't enough, Saturday, 9 souls died. An avoidable death, I should say. It just feels, like I said in the morning, when I was speaking with Sheriff during the news bulletin, it just feels like every quarter a truck would fall. When we had not even finished talking about the 9 people that died yesterday, another one again in the Dokwemu area of Lagos. I saw the video and I couldn't I honestly could not believe that somebody sane will get into that truck and be driving it. It was slanted. Just imagine that there was a vehicle by its side. We'll be talking about another avoidable death this morning after 9 people died. 4 men, 3 women, a boy and a girl. Families have been thrown into mourning because people will not obey the law, because both the state and the federal government will not do what needs to be done. Such a sad situation. Anyway, let's move on. I guess my guest will be waiting right about now, because we're about to get into that conversation. Friday last week, we saw the election petition tribunal in Osun State annulled, annulling the governorship election right there and declaring that the former governor, Oyetola, should be the man who was re-elected. Well, it caused a whole lot of conversations. A lot of conversations, have been going on, about this particular issue. Questions have been thrown up, but for me, the biggest question will be, what the machine we're going to use in the forthcoming elections, the beavers. People are beginning to have doubts here and there. We'll try and talk about that on the show this evening, even as we try to have former Vice President of the Nigeria Bar Association, Mr. Monday Ubani, join us on the newsroom this evening. A very good evening to you, sir. Welcome to the newsroom.
My pleasure.
It's good to have you. It's been a while. But before we get into the conversations about the election, I would like to ask your thoughts about, the APC presidential candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and his well-publicized comments in Abeokuta last week. Do you think that outburst will in any way threaten the campaign of the APC?
Without the comments, because there were so many comments that you made.
Okay, the one, more or less accusing his own party of sabotaging his campaign with, the new policies about the CBN.
Jagaban have always been in the opposition. If you recall, he has always been in the opposition, and so he was speaking as if he is still in opposition party, and that is what I think that he has forgotten that he is no longer in the opposition. They are actually holding the reins of power. They are the one now running the affairs of the country. So when you now say you want to take over from them, who are you taking over from? From the same political party. So it may have been affected by the perennial run as an opposition. So he has forgotten that he's no longer in opposition. That may be something that may have accounted for that. But I think the political leaders in the APC had to arrange a meeting with the president where all these things were ironed out, that these things occur.
Yep.
Yeah, call it misfire. You can misfire at any point in time, and then you also try as much as possible to build up relationship and explain your position and say, well, when the microphone sometimes is given to you, there is a spirit behind the microphone, and that is a very wonderful spirit behind the microphone. So if you don't control that spirit, there are certain things you can say when using the microphone. That when you now sit back and begin to actually appreciate this thing another. So it's a spirit behind the microphone. But I think that has been sorted out because there was a quick meeting at Aso Rock with the political leaders where the explanations were done. And I think everyone is moving on. That's what I think.
Okay, we'll hope that's the case. Even though I found it a bit curious that the following day, I think it was another campaign. This time it was, I think, Benue. Yeah. There was that a little bit of switch, to change the narrative from, it's not them again. The them we're talking about is the PDP who have colluded with major marketers. Yes. I found that a bit funny.
Very strange. Yes.
Anyway, to be very honest with you, Mr. Ubani, I honestly cannot wait for the election season to be over. I am tired.
Everyone is beginning to get tired too. Honestly, the process of electoral, campaigns and the things that come with it at times, can be boring. Now, if you remember that the Electoral Act gave a longer time for campaign, that is actually what is making this thing so boring. Now
I guess
all of us are getting tired, because nothing new is being said on the horizon. We're all used to these promises, so we are all tired of the promises. What we need actually is a practical, application of things that can change the life of every individual in the country, because great nation with great potentials, but the kind of leadership that have emerged over time have not been able to manage these resources to the benefit of the majority of the citizens. And so when they come up with all these promises again and say, here we go again, we had all that now. We had so much to the extent that I, as I speak to you, was one of those who was hoodwinked into believing there's going to be an effective change in the system. But unfortunately, we didn't see that change, So I am no longer, if you see my role now, my role is a bit minimal. I'm no longer putting my heart into anything whatsoever because I knew
once bitten.
Yes, you want 100 times shy. I am very 100 times shy now in supporting any because I have been beaten. I've been beaten. So that is the situation.
Okay, we'll leave it at that, but we're still talking politics. Let's talk about that judgment from Friday that has got everybody talking. The issue of overvoting, it's worth noting that one of the witnesses, at the tribunal did agree that there was overvoting in about 6 polling units. However, the judgment suggested that it was in over 700 units, and that's what the majority judgments, they relied on to make the pronouncements that they made. What does the Electoral Act, actually say about overvoting?
Well, overvote, the former act did not introduce beavers. It's a new act that introduced beavers.
Yeah.
The beavers now is the process of accreditation. In other words, the number of persons that are get accredited in any polling unit should be the number of persons that should cast their vote. So if the number of persons that get accredited, you have more people that carry out the exercise of voting, more than the accredited number of voters, then that is overvoting process. That what constitutes overvoting.
Okay.
And if the difference between the winner and the loser will make a lot of difference in case you add it. What the Electoral Act always recommend is that there should be that result to be cancelled and a rerun probably ordered. But in this case, there is this explanation that is coming up, and that's why INEC should be able to speak up, because we don't want a situation where the confidence of the people who will exercise their civic responsibility in 2023 will be dampened. They will get discouraged and say, look, we have deployed technology in our electoral process, so we expect fairness. Deployment of technology, the purpose of it is to expect fairness in our electoral process.
True.
So if we are now allowing...
having doubts.
if we are now allowing the human interference, which is what the deployment of technology was supposed to have solved, to now come in again and begin to manipulate the electoral process, then we're in danger. We are back to square one. So we have not been able to improve our system if we now become a victim of the previous acts of irregularity that was prevalent under the old act. If you remember, we are so excited about 2022 electoral act. Why? Because of this issue of technology now taking over some of the functions of human beings. And the human beings have always created irregularity in the system. They always manipulate the system. So if we have now said we have moved forward and we're going back again to those irregularities that the act has sought to solve, then we're in a big mess. That's why we must begin to insist that INEC should speak up. I called one of the INEC officials today and then, called 1 or 2 lawyers that handle this particular case. I said, you guys need to give us a clearer picture of what transpired. Because I know that when you conduct an election in a polling unit, you must fill a form you must fill a form that actually tells you the number of accredited voters. The result must also indicate what was the total score of the votings. So what we have in that form, the EC8 form, 8A or whatever form, is it different from what was actually reported now by the beavers? And if INEC is saying that the report they gave before was a temporary report, was that indicated that this report is temporary pending the time you do your synchronization? Because we keep on hearing now that when the result now was now synchronized, this is now a complete result of those that actually participated in accrediting and voting. So was that anticipated by INEC that this is a temporary report pending the time the total vote will come in? Because according to some of the explanation I gathered, is that when you are casting your vote, I mean the process of accreditation, when the machine is idle, it will begin to send results to the server. When it's even idle, it begin to send results. That is only when you finish the election itself and then synchronize your this thing now, you now have the absolute figure of those that got accredited. Did INEC itself anticipate and know this? Was this very, very clear to them? And if these things were very, very clear to them, was this the explanation that they gave to the court in the new result that they came up with now that was a synchronized result? Was that properly explained to the court and to the knowledge of the court? So, there is a dissenting judgment. And I have understood that this dissenting judgment is very comprehensive and may actually reflect the reality on ground. That is what I'm here to read it. I've asked somebody, please, can you send me both the majority judgment and then the dissenting judgment? Let me have the privilege of reading both and see whether I would really understand what could have probably happened. Because I don't want a situation where, as I said earlier, the people's confidence in the electoral process, with the new Improved Act, will be dampened and people begin to say, oh my God, with Osun now, do you still have the enthusiasm to go for election that eventually will be nullified by the court? And I have always written that in as much as I believe that the court must always come in to address grievances of any of the parties in an electoral process, that we must try as much as possible to reduce the interference of judicial
as much as possible, because it is actually the people that determines the mandate of whoever governs them, and that is actually what democracy is all about: government of the people by the people. So it's the people. So if we now begin to consign the responsibility that the people should perform at the polling unit to the judiciary, it is dangerous, because you will begin to have results like number 4 becoming number 1, and that will not really infuse confidence in the process. So that is danger. I agree that the judiciary must come in if somebody is aggrieved, but we must also know the limitation, know their jurisdiction, know the level of interference. Because if they keep on, we will consign that responsibility to our judiciary to carry out, then I can assure you that they are all human beings too. They are not God. They are not God. Okay, so there's this thing that bothers me a little bit. I remember when the present APC were in the opposition, when we had the courts upturn some judgments, at least in Osun State, I think it was 2010,
yes.
And some other states. The popular narrative every time those things happened was that, democracy in progress, democracy is working,
yes.
But if the judgment favored the ruling party at the time, which was the PDP,
yes.
It was the opposite. Flip the coin 13 years after, and I'm speaking from the Osun judgment
yes.
of 2010, the overriding sentiment, at least over the weekend, was, this is a disservice to democracy. It's a miscarriage of justice. At least I'm quoting the governor of Osun State now. And there's this feeling of, because it's the ruling party now, it's not democracy. How do we get past all of that sentiment and face the nitty-gritty of the matter, which is whether or not the overvoting affected the result and INEC's role in all of this quote-unquote shenanigans?
Yeah, I'm going to answer with two specific answer to your question. It happens to everyone that loses at the court in Nigeria, not necessarily even political cases. Most time, if lawyers lose a case in both criminal and civil and all that, they will tell you that, oh, the judiciary is not working, the judiciary is very, very corrupt. Because you want to see things from your own prism, from your own point of view. And so if the judge sees it from another point of view and you feel that it is not in your favor, you now feel that probably judiciary is not. So it can happen to a political party that is in power. It can also happen to the political party in opposition. Anytime people lose at the court, they always want to blame the judiciary. Oh, the democracy is not at work or is at work. Whenever you win, anytime anyone wins, they will all praise the judiciary to the high heaven. The judiciary becomes the last hope of the common man. But the moment you lose, at the court, most times you hear very scathing remarks, and some of the remarks are very derogatory of the judiciary. It does happen, but I think that the best thing for us to do in all situations is to ensure that if we feel that justice has not been served in any case that the judiciary has handled, there is appellate option. You go to the Court of Appeal, and if you lose also at the Court of Appeal, there is also a superior Supreme Court, which is the final court of the land. You also have to approach. So these layers are created in order to ensure that there is no way all of them will keep on making the same mistake, because at another end, another one can. Because there's one we handled recently where the Court of Appeal, gave a very strange judgment, and we felt very aggrieved and said, look, this cannot stand, the test, the crucibles of, judicial eye. And we went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court agreed that we are right in our notice of appeal. So I think that we must be. We must exhaust all that judicial ladder, so that before we begin to now say judiciary is killing democracy and all that. So that is one. The second argument that I want to put up: the people that preside over our courts are men and women made up of water and blood. They are not gods. I mean, they are human beings, and so some of them may have their interests and all that. So we have to be careful not to get the judiciary involved the way we are getting judiciary involved in our electoral contest. It's becoming very worrisome. If they tell you how many cases were filed at the pre-election matter, we have not entered into the real election instead, because remember, election is holding in this February and March. If you see how our courts is going to be busy with everyone going to virtually, even the ones that have lost, and they know they lost even in their polling units, they will still want to contest the fact that they would have been declared winner if not for so and they go to court.
The court just actually struck out one suit from 2019.
Yes.
Just I think it was yesterday or thereabouts.
I don't know what I think. Even Buhari's election is still being
exactly. One of them was struck out, over the weekend.
Other today even. I think there's one that was reserved for Buhari's, to vacate his office and all that. Just 3 months to his tenure, and you are telling the court to ask him to vacate. Even if I'm the one against Buhari and I'm presiding over that kind of thing, you want me to remove Buhari now that everyone wants him to go peacefully? So Buhari will tell you that within these 4 months would have changed Nigeria to paradise. So no court will do that. No court will do that. Are you following me? So what I'm trying to say is that can we try as much as possible to really also educate our political elites, those who contest for offices, that it is not every matter that you go to court for. And then you are burdening the judiciary, practically the one who gave that judgment that day in the Supreme Court. The judge was practically crying that our political elite and lawyers should allow them, that they are being burdened, that their primary responsibility over civil and criminal cases are suffering because of political cases, which the law has given priority over other cases. And we are saying we are running democracy where people cannot be able to get justice within a timeline because of some other interference in our judiciary. I mean, talking about political cases that now have occupied, in fact, the Supreme Court now has suspended every other case. to concentrate on political cases. So how come the politicians are not getting things right for us as a nation? We are not enjoying good governance. They come again, the normal judiciary, some of us will need to get justice for some of the cases we're handling. The political elites are taking over. We can't have our cases that we have filed 4, 5, 6 years ago here at the appellate court because of political cases. So it's becoming a big problem. Okay. So I'm saying that we must try as much as possible to minimize the level of inviting the judiciary into a civic responsibility that the citizens should conclude at the polling unit and the result declared at the polling unit, because that is where it's supposed to end, and not necessarily at the courts.
Which brings me to the INEC question.
Yes.
Surely INEC has a lot to tell us about this issue, right?
That's right. I agree with you, because I've called one of them, if I the man that is in charge. So I say, look, you guys need to speak up. Try and read the judgment, mister. Try and read the dissenting judgment. And then let us have explanation as to what has happened. And he told me that will be done. It's important we clear the mind of Nigerians with regard to what happened in Osho, because it's not sending a good soundbite. We're not happy with what happened and all that. If again we can compromise and manipulate the electoral process with all the level of improvement we have done in the act, then we are in for another big mess in the general election. So I think that they need to speak up and give a clearer picture of what has actually transpired.
So let's move the conversation a little bit. There's a part of the judgment that seems to have been overlooked a little bit, and it has to do with the issue of forgery of certificates, for the governor, that's Adeleke. Now, one of the issues that the court was asked to determine is whether or not he forged. Well, it looks like the tribunal unanimously agreed that yes, there was a bit of forgery. However, that he was still qualified to run because he had other certificates.
Beautiful.
But there's a part of the constitution that also says if someone presents a forged certificate to INEC, that person should be disqualified from running for governor of a state. So where do okay, he's got higher qualifications, he's got other certificates which can qualify the school set. But if indeed the school set was forged, how do you now reconcile these two contrasting views?
Very, very interesting question. I don't know what case, whether it was this school certificate issue that went as far as up to Supreme Court.
Okay.
Because his qualification issue has been an issue from lower to Court of Appeal up to Supreme Court.
Okay.
Now, if the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal, which is higher than the tribunal, has cleared him, educationally, and has said that he has no forgery issue. So I don't know whether it was a different certificate entirely that was actually an issue before the tribunal, because I think that issue has been resolved. His educational qualification has been resolved by a higher court, and that was the Court of Appeal. And when they appealed to Supreme Court, I think the matter was struck out. I don't think it was even decided on merit. So that lays to rest
whatever the tribunal says.
Yeah, about his qualification. So I don't know what again came up before the tribunal that this year unanimous decision about his forgery matter was. So as I said earlier, I'm here to read the judgment itself fully to really appreciate what was the position of the court with regards to that forgery thing. But if it is the same issue that the higher court has dealt with previously, then it will be contrary to judicial precedent for the lower court now to overrule what the Court of Appeal have said.
So Adeleke says that the judgment is a miscarriage of justice. I'm pretty certain he must have filed the appeal already. Okay, I'm not pretty certain. I don't know yet. But he says he would appeal.
Yes, he has 21 days. Yes.
Yeah. From the little you know about this case, do you think that obviously this case will most likely get to the highest level, which is the Supreme Court?
There's no two about it. If any prophet tells you that I predict that this matter, please give him a slap, because he's lying. This doesn't require prophetic knowledge. It is obvious that this matter will get to the Supreme Court, no doubt.
I have to talk about this. The Golololo and the Bugawan, that found its way into the
judgment of the judgment.
So I understand, the judges trying to go with some bit of literary license, you know.
Yes,
I think that's what we call it in English and literary studies.
Yes,
exactly. You know, but so let me read that part. He said,
please, under what context? Under what context did he bring the issue of his dancing mannerism, or what he likes doing and all that? So let me. Can you read it a bit?
To be very honest, I have not been able to read all the judgment. Even if I did, I might not even understand.
No. It's pure English, simple English. You can make sense out of it. You know, after you can read something on medicine and get small knowledge of whatever they're saying.
Well, to be honest with you, Mr. Bani, law cases or suits like that, usually it breaks my head. So I try as much as possible to read what I can. But I think he was talking about the governor that that they could not have just continued going low and Bugawa like the duly elected. I'm just worried a bit.
Was that necessary? You know, because
exactly that's my question.
I think that is not what he was asked to determine. You know that it's called obiter dictum. Obiter dictum is a statement that is not, really part of the substance of the case. And the substance of the case is usually called ratio decidendi. In law, you call it ratio decidendi, the main matter that he has to decide. But when you go on a frolic, and begin to say things that are not clearly what you're supposed to do.
Even added seek is Daniel's song.
Yes, so it is called obiter. Maybe that statement was made as an obiter. But if it turns out that he used it in such a manner that is inappropriate, showing that he was really biased, that can become a ground of appeal. I don't know what. I don't know what, because some judges have made some statement that is clearly out of, that was unnecessary.
True.
And it becomes something that the court of appeal say, look, you shouldn't have said this. It means that you have already determined, you have your
predetermined notion already.
That probably you hate his dancing step, but that could have, probably you don't like his mannerism, because the man dances sometimes to the detriment of his person. Me, I don't like all that every time and all that, but that shouldn't.
That's him.
That shouldn't. That's who he is.
Exactly.
That makes him a very unique person. Are you following me?
Yeah.
And if there is some joy, and if he doesn't dance, he
probably might not know how to govern the state.
The government state. Maybe that dancing gives him to give him that all knowledge and all the wisdom that he requires to carry out his responsibility. I don't know. It gives him a kick. Are you following me?
Yeah, Mr.
So
Bani,
that is his personality.
I guess we would have to leave it at that. We are really running out of time.
Well,
but thank you very much. It's going to be an ongoing conversations. I think. But thank you very much for joining us on the newsroom.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that was former Vice President of the Nigeria Bar Association, Mr. Monday Ubani, joining us. Just a quick correction. I was talking about the president's visit earlier, and talking about the Dangote refinery. It was actually the Lekki deep sea port. That was one of the things the president commissioned. Apologies for that error, and thank you. He didn't actually put his name, the man who sent me a message to actually make that correction. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And of course, there was something the president commissioned that is after my heart. The rail line from Marina to Mile 2. Hopefully that gets working, and hopefully it gets to Kokomaiko, because that leads to my house. Thank you guys for joining us on the newsroom. I'll be back again 6:15 next week Monday. Until then, stay safe.
More conversation, more talk, more right after this.
And I want to assume that you would run, because I want to give the listeners context for the conversation.
In 2019, you were running mate to Atiku Abubakar. What did you learn then that you will not repeat this time?
Yes, when is the president coming out to address us?
There's a few things. One, I have a burden and a passion for young people.
The fact that you have elected a man does not mean then you begin to order him around. The president will do whatever is good for the country at any given time.
Mr. Adeshino, isn't the president responsible to the people?
What should the next president do to root out stakeholders who are complicit?
You fire those. Those that need to be fired are fired. It's looking like a brand new Chelsea, attacking with so much fluidity. And what can you say about that, Martin? I know you follow Chelsea quite closely.
I live close to the Chelsea training ground. That's what you mean by that. I'm not.